In this episode, I am going to share my religious background and my current religious standing. I feel like I've gone through about 6 stages of religious life. The first stage is what I'm going to call blind acceptance. I was in this stage from when I was a kid to about 15 years old. I had a Catholic upbringing. I went to parochial schools, and I pretty much just accepted whatever was told to me. I did not really question much or even discuss religion, God, philosophy, etc., with others. I do remember that I really wanted to be a good person, though. I remember admiring the Catholic saints and thinking, I want to be like them. I also used to pray every night before going to bed. You know, Even at a young age, I didn't quite understand the idea of praying for specific things. If prayer works, why not just pray for everyone, right? So that is what I did. I am calling the second stage searching. I was in this stage from about age 15 to about 18. I really started to actively search for truth, meaning, purpose of life, answers to the big questions and all that stuff around my sophomore year in high school. So I read a bunch of books that made me think more deeply, including the Bible. Yes, I actually read the Bible. The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding by David Hume, Be Here Now, The Power of Now, some Buddhism for Dummies book, and a bunch of other books at the time. And these were just cursory reads. I didn't really go deeply into any of these books. I was just kind of in this searching mode. Then I read The Science of Self-Realization by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This book stood out more than any other book I read. And reading this book led me to read 5 other books by the same author: Bhagavad Gita, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nectar of Instruction, and Nectar of Devotion. These are some of the core books in the Hare Krishna tradition. I felt that these books had better answers than Christianity to the big questions of life. The whole philosophy and worldview was more eloquent, more beautiful, and just more profound to me than anything I've ever heard before. These books gave way more details about God, the spiritual world, and the process to know and love God. These books provided details on what God looks like, his activities, his qualities, and they gave many details on the loving exchanges he has with his friends and relatives. And they're all extremely sweet. Krishna plays chess, for crying out loud. How cool is that? He wrestles, he runs around with no shoes on, he plays leapfrog, he imitates animals, he dances, and, does unlimitedly more activities. Nietzsche once said that he would believe in a God that knows how to dance. So it seems like he may not have been aware of Krishna, who was described as the best of all dancers. So I believe it was a combination of the profound philosophy, the attractive pastimes of Krishna, and hearing the beautiful, selfless prayers that were sung by Krishna's friends that really attracted my heart. I also learned that this Hare Krishna tradition has roots going back over 5,000 years ago, which may be older than any other religion. And I always felt that if God were eternal, it would make sense that the best religion should have been around the longest. So toward the end of my searching phase, I accepted Krishna as God, and I believed that there was a process to get to know God. I started practicing some of the things that were mentioned in the books, like mantra meditation, offering your food to Krishna, and other practices. In fact, I remember going to church early sometimes so that I could do some mantra meditation before Mass began. I tried sharing this Hare Krishna ideology with my friends, but none of them seemed interested in it. I also lived in a small city, and there were no other Hare Krishna practitioners in my area that I knew about. So I felt kind of alone in my interest in Krishna consciousness. And I remember sincerely praying that I could meet other people who were also interested in Krishna consciousness. So the next stage I'm calling Hare Krishna training. I was in this stage during my college years, so about 18 to 22, 23. When I first got to college, I was really hoping I would meet other people who were interested in Krishna consciousness. I remember going to Quad Day and hoping I would find like a Krishna club or something like that. Unfortunately, no such clubs existed at the time. So one day I was talking with my friend and she said, "Did you see the Hare Krishnas on the quad?" And I was like, "No. Why didn't you tell me they were there?" So I was thinking that I just missed my only shot to meet the Hare Krishnas. So I told her, if you ever see them again, let me know right away. It just so happened that the Hare Krishnas did come back. They came back like about a month later, and they were doing their thing again on the quad. So my friend called me and said, "You got to get to the quad. The Hare Krishnas are back." So I dropped whatever I was doing and I went straight there. So when I got there, I saw them and I felt kind of a little giddy inside. I walked right up to them and I asked, "Is this the Hare Krishna movement?" They said yes. And I noticed that they were displaying some books, and they happened to be the same books that I read in high school. So I told them that I read, that book and that book and that book and that book. So they were surprised, and they asked if I wanted to join in on the chanting. And I wasn't ready for publicly chanting or anything like that at that time. But I asked if they had any programs or activities I could attend. And it turned out that they had a center in town, and I started going to the programs right away.
There are two main programs that most people are invited to. There's the morning programs, and then there's the Saturday evening programs. I'm definitely a good person to ask, considering that I go to just about every program here. So I guess you can consider me a regular. The morning programs are really nice. Not so many people come, so it's a very intimate setting, and you get a lot of personal attention. So you get a chance to learn from very advanced devotees on a more like one-to-one level. You get to ask any questions, doesn't matter how intelligent or stupid they are. And you just get to express any issues or concerns that you have about life.
I went there pretty much every day for the morning service before I went to my college classes. And sometimes I also attended an evening service if one was going on. So while I was associating with devotees and going to programs regularly, I also happened to make friends with fellow engineering and science majors, and they all tended to be atheists. So this led me down the path of looking into all the debates about whether God exists or not. I remember hearing from, the four horsemen, Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, and Dennett, and other prominent atheists. So during the Hare Krishna programs, I brought up the main arguments that I was hearing from atheists. And, the Hare Krishna devotees were able to give good answers to a lot of the common arguments that I was hearing from atheists. And I was satisfied with the devotees' answers at the time, and I was able to move forward with my Hare Krishna practice happily while I was doing my studies. The Hare Krishna devotees, they really trained me up good in the practice of Krishna consciousness. I really lucked out with some amazing teachers, Prithushrava and Danakeli.
Prithushrava and Danakeli, they're absolutely wonderful devotees. As far as I'm concerned, they're two of the greatest saints on this planet. They wouldn't be able to do what they do unless they deeply cared for the welfare of people in general. And it's just really inspiring to be able to go to these programs and see such advanced devotees as Prithushrava and Danakeli, how they are not only deeply understand the philosophy, but they're actually practicing what they're preaching, and they're joyfully doing it too. So to see that, it's very inspiring. Priti Shravan Dainikili never fail to blow me away by their realizations and their compassion. It's demonstrated every time in Srimad Bhagavatam class. There's never a time that I leave Srimad Bhagavatam class without learning something new, or having my eyes opened in some new way, or seeing things in a different perspective. So in that sense, the Srimad Bhagavatam classes are very special.
I owe a lot to them. They gave me so much love, attention, time, care, engagement, knowledge, and everything. I really looked up to them as kind of parental figures. So this was a very magical stage of my religious life. I felt like the devotees blew my mind every day with all the wisdom from the Vedic literature and their own realizations. Learning all this stuff about Krishna consciousness was an amazing experience. I felt really inspired, and life was good. The next stage I'm calling a deep dive. I was in this stage from age 23 to around 25. So after college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I did know that I wanted Krishna consciousness to be at the forefront of whatever it is that I do. So after having some discussions with some of the Hare Krishna devotees, and after having a very profound dream, I decided to quit my full-time chemical engineering job and dive headfirst into the Hare Krishna world and move into the Hare Krishna monastery. I did not want to join the monastery or the ashram with any financial obligations, so I paid off all my debts, including my student loans, as fast as I could. And then I saved up about $10,000 or so as an emergency fund, which I thought would be enough money to start my life over again if I needed to. So when I was in the ashram, I followed the 4 regulative principles of no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no intoxication. I woke up every day around 4 in the morning, and I participated in kind of intense spiritual practices until around 9 in the morning. And during the day, I did various services for the temple, and at night, I participated in an evening program for about an hour or so before going to bed. So after about a year of monastic life, I received formal initiation into the Hare Krishna order, and I received the name Dayatadas. So this was also a very, magical stage of my religious life. The monastery I joined was growing. I still felt inspired. I felt I had meaning and purpose in life. I felt content and peaceful. Life was still good. The next stage I am calling doubts arising. I was in this stage from age 25 to around age 28. So after living in the ashram for about a year and a half, I started to have some doubts creep up. These were not so much doubts about the Hare Krishna philosophy, but more doubts about me continuing to live in the ashram. I started debating whether I should continue to live as a celibate monk or whether I should get married. When I joined the ashram, there were only a couple of monks actually living there full-time, participating in all the programs. Shortly after I moved in, more people joined the ashram, and it actually became a happening place. However, after some time, I started to notice that the ashram was a very transitory place for most people. People were constantly coming and going. It was very rare to have someone stay there for any significant amount of time. As I was noticing the transitory nature of the ashram, I also had a conversation with my teachers that trained me up in Krishna consciousness. And they asked me what my plan was, and they posed a thought-provoking question, for me at least, which was, how long can you live in the place where you work? And this made my head spin, and I remember not being able to sleep that night. So this exchange, along with my realization of the transitory nature of the ashram, made me realize that I wasn't cut out for monk life, and that I should get a real job and probably get married. So there was a period around this time where I kind of went back and forth about living in the ashram and I thought there was a chance I could make monk life work. I thought that maybe if some things could change with how things were done at the temple, maybe it could work. So I proposed making some changes in the ashram, but my ideas were perhaps not well presented or well received by temple management. Through this experience, I realized that the institution was not going to change in a way that would accommodate me. So I officially decided to get married and move out of the ashram. The transition from monk life to married life was a bit difficult for me. The getting married part was not difficult, but the getting a job part was difficult. I had difficulty finding an engineering job due to there being a large gap in my resume. I also did not know how the real world functioned or how to get a job because I was living a secluded monastic life for several years. When I did apply for jobs, I ended up being the target of an elaborate scam, which resulted in me having to file bankruptcy. So I ended up in the position of being newly married, jobless, and bankrupt. It was a difficult position for me to be in. I felt pretty awful. I felt like I could not take care of my family. This was definitely a clear transition point in my life. My mind shifted from spiritual life being priority number one to making money being priority number one. So I paused my spiritual practice to focus on my career and getting situated materially. In the later part of this stage, I still identified as a Hare Krishna devotee, but I felt that I was just a devotee in hibernation. I really thought I would pick up my spiritual practices again after I get my material life situated. Or, maybe I would pick them up again when I retire or something like that. The next stage I am calling agnostic. I started this stage around age 28, and I think I'm still in this stage now. I'm currently 33. When I got a job and found some level of material stability, I started becoming interested in how the world works. I started looking into all the things that I was never really interested in before. I read about technology, politics, education, parenting, finance, health, and so many other topics. So I devoured podcasts, read lots of books, watched informative YouTube videos, and followed lots of great leaders and thinkers throughout the world on Twitter. I felt like I missed out on so many amazing things that were going on in the world when I was primarily focusing on spiritual life. So perhaps because my mind had become open to exploring new ideas, I also started questioning some of my core Hare Krishna beliefs. Doubts started becoming more prominent. Doubts about the Hare Krishna practice, doubts about God's existence, and doubts about the goal of life. I'm now at a point where I'm not really sure what I believe, and I have adopted more of an agnostic mindset in general. I'm not currently doing any explicit, regular Hare Krishna practice, but I'm not against those practices. I still find myself doing mantra meditation spontaneously from time to time, and I'm still friends with devotees. I made my strongest friendships with devotees. I learned the most valuable life lessons from devotees, and I had some of my most profound life experiences with devotees. And I'm truly grateful for that. So perhaps in some way I feel that Krishna and his devotees will always be in my heart. So that about sums up my religious background. Thanks for listening. Take care.